Welcome back, everyone. The conversation surrounding gender equality is ongoing and important, but are we missing out on understanding something equally important? Equity. Karlyn Percil is here to explain how these two words are not the same and why understanding that is the difference in creating a better future for women. So, Kar, a lot of people might think equity and equality are the same. Can you break down how they are, in fact, not?
Yes, absolutely, Tracy. To a great many people, equality and equity basically mean the same thing. And we tend to use the words interchangeably. But equality and equity are two very different concepts, and the differences are more than semantic. So, for example, when we say equality, we're talking about two things having the same or similar value. So, when we treat two people or two groups equally, we make sure that they have or they are getting the same thing. For example, if we want to give the boys hockey team a budget increase, then we need to make sure that the girls hockey team will get the same budget increase. And that is equality. But when we're talking about equity, equity can be defined as giving both men and women the resources needed to be successful according to their needs, which is very different from equality, which looks at giving everyone the same thing. And in other words, it's not about giving everyone the same thing, Tracy, because giving everyone the same thing means that we're assuming that everyone is starting out in the very same place.
And we all know that we're not. We're not all starting out in the same place. We don't all have the same access. We don't all have the same means.
Exactly.
We don't have the same privilege. So this is an interesting point. How would you differentiate the two in another way, Kar?
I mean, for example, let's take the two of us, right? We're both successful, strong Black women, but the opportunities and the resources and the access and the advantages that both of us have is very different. Let's break it down and give everyone an example here.
Okay, let's do it. So for every statement I read, Kar and myself are going to put down our finger. So you can put up the hand, and
Yes.
it will showcase.
Put it up the hand.
Put up the hand. It'll showcase how access and means vary from person to person. It's different for everyone. So I was born in this country. I'm going to keep all my fingers up. How about you, Kar?
Okay, I was not born in this country, so that's one finger down.
I went to a Canadian school. How about you, Kar?
I did not go to a Canadian school, so my social circles and access is totally different from yours.
Okay, English is my first language. How about you?
English is my first language, but we also speak French Creole in St. Lucia, so I tend to use different words.
I have my parents and family in the same country to support me, and trust me, they do. I'm there all the time.
I do not. I moved here alone. I do have family in Ottawa, and I do have a sister here, but I moved Karlyn here all by herself.
It's a huge step. I grew up with a Canadian accent. How about you, Kar?
I do not. I have a Caribbean, West Indian, French Creole accent, and this tend to always remind people that I don't belong here and I'm not from here, which again gives me totally different access to a multitude of different things.
That's right. You've got one finger. I've got my whole hand up. Both Black women, both very successful in what we're doing, and both with very different means and access to privilege. And the reason why even the accent is important, or even our names. Karlyn Percil is fairly innocuous. They're not going to know if you are Muslim, if you are Asian. You could potentially be white. Same with Tracy Moore. When people hear me on the phone with my Canadian accent, they assume I'm white. So that gets me through certain barriers. And it was the same for my husband in Quebec. They assumed he was a white Quebecois. He would show up for interviews and they'd be like, oh my gosh, who's that Black guy? So all of these things are barriers. And they're all things that we need to think about. We've got a great graphic here that shows it. If you give every single person the same box to look over the fence, there's still some people that can't look over the fence. If you give everyone a box that will help them look over the fence, that is equity. So we need to think a little bit more about where people are starting versus where we want them to end, don't we?
And that's exactly what it is. And I love this quote by Dr. Nahid Dosani, who says that equality is giving everyone a shoe. Equity is ensuring that everyone has a shoe that fits, Tracy. And this is where we get to true equity. And for example, if gender equity in the workplace and in the world, universally, there are clear patterns of women's inferior access to resources and opportunities. Moreover, women are systemically underrepresented also in decision-making roles and processes that actually shape our societies and our realities. And again, it's like recruiting both a male and female employee, but do we give the female employee access to and opportunities and resources and rewards to expand her career and help her grow, say, for example, so that she can get a seat at the board of directors table or maybe a seat at the C-suite. Again, yes, both employees will be getting the same opportunity in terms of getting hired. But again, when we look at it through an equity mindset, we're looking at the unique needs and understanding where women started. And we know, Tracy, for example, with the impact of COVID, the World Economic Forum says that on its current trajectory, it will now take 135, almost 136 years to close the gender gap worldwide. So we know this pattern of inequality is a constraint to the progress of any society because it limits the opportunities of one half of its population. So it's very important for us to understand the difference between equality and equity.
And so equity will lead to equality. What can allies do to help this process along?
Gabriella Schuster puts it really well. She says we need to become allies. And she has an acronym. And you know I love an acronym, Tracy. C stands for connect. We need to be intentional, make intentional connections with our network. O stands for outreach. This is about women working in companies, examining recruiting practices and policies. When you're looking for new candidates, are you screening in for candidates or are you screening for candidates across the spectrum of gender diversity? And also going beyond this, looking at race, looking at abilities, looking at ageism, and what would be the impact? What needs will be different for those individuals based on this multiple definitions of identity. M stands for mentor. And Tracy, you're such a huge advocate for that. You do such a great job mentoring young women of color and Black women because it is a different road path for them in the media industry. And when you mentor, you blaze a trail. You show the possibility for others and you give back what you have gained, the insights that you have gained. And again, it's like lifting that, that one woman at a time. We can all do it through mentorship. And E is for empowerment. And when I say empower, I love to talk about the difference is that the most impactful things we can do is to create a culture of empowerment, right? To ensure that we're educating ourselves about the barriers that Black women, Indigenous women, and what all women are still facing so that you can sponsor them. Again, sponsor them from a place of equity, not equality. Promote them from a place of equity, again, looking at where they started and also stepping aside to make room, trading off some of that advantages that you may have gotten systemically to ensure that we are breaking down, Tracy, taking that 136 years, and let's hopefully get it to at least 100 or maybe even lower.
These are good goals, very clearly laid out there, Kar, and congratulations on all your success because we see what you've had to go through and the hoops you've had to jump through, and here you are in all your glory. Thanks for helping us understand that crucial difference between equity and equality, everyone.